Today we're going to be talking about gait determinants and some key concepts. Frick. Today we're going to be talking about gait determinants and how our body is designed to walk extremely efficiently. I know what you're thinking. Why am I holding an egg? It's because it's how we walk. Okay, there's two things I want to talk about before we get going, and one is that the more the center of mass moves, the greater the energy expenditure, or the more energy it costs for your body. And that's not exactly true, as we'll see here. There's like this up and down motion and side to side motion, but just take this as a general rule that if we limit the amount that our center of mass moves, or our body segments move, we will decrease how much energy we use. Another thing is normal center of mass displacement occurs with two sinusoidal waves. So it kind of sounds a little intimidating, but all it is that our body moves up and down as we walk. It also moves left and right. When we go up and down, the highest point here at all of these spots is during mid stance. So when we're on one leg and we're shifting forward, about to go onto the other foot. And then the lowest point is when our legs are spread apart. Because when our legs are spread apart, also known as double limb support, when we do that double limb support, our legs are spread apart and we lower our center of mass. That'll be explained in a little bit. And the other thing is the other sinusoidal wave, or this up and down squiggly line, is left and right, and our center of mass shifts towards whichever leg during stance. So with this egg, as it's rolling, the center of mass is at its highest during mid stance, and then at its lowest at double limb support. Okay, so this first set of gait determinant that we're going to talk about is minimizing downward displacement. So there's two of them. One is horizontal plane pelvic rotation and sagittal plane ankle rotation. So minimize downward displacement, what that means is we're going to prevent our center of mass from dropping too low. So you could look at it that way, or you could look at it as we're going to try and elevate our center of mass. I'm going to use this card to represent legs. So like this side is going to be one leg, this side will be the other leg. So when they're together, or one leg, it's this long. This would be during mid stance, while the other leg's in swinging through. But then when you're in double limb support and the legs are kind of spread out a bit, I'm going to exaggerate it for a dramatic effect. Oh gosh. So if this is the ground, to represent our body, let's just say it's here, that is at a higher point than there. When do we need to minimize how low our body, our center of mass drops, is at this lowest point. And then we're going to see later on, to minimize upward displacement, we're going to want to minimize it here. Because if we prevent how much the center of mass moves, we can minimize the energy expenditure. What we're going to be talking about for minimizing downward displacement, it's going to be right here. So the first thing we're going to do is to prevent our legs from going into so much flexion and so much extension. We are going to add in this horizontal plane, the transverse plane or horizontal plane, this pelvic rotation. Because when we get this motion here, it makes it so we still functionally lengthen our legs so we can go quite a bit of distance while walking or for each step. But we don't have to do this much flexion and extension, which lowers our center of mass. This helps to decrease flexion / extension of the legs. By decreasing flexion and extension at the hips, we're raising the center of mass or minimizing how low the center of mass goes. Sagittal plane ankle rotation, so that's dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. Those are the movements we're talking about. And what happens is at this lowest point of our center of mass, we're going to throw in dorsiflexion, except the ankle isn't shaped like this, right? Because our calcaneus protrudes behind us. So in a way, it kind of makes our leg longer. So this is like initial contact or like the very beginning of loading response. And then this one, at the same time that's happening, that's when we have pre-swing. Not like that. That's when we have pre-swing. So it's somewhat like that. And that also, because we're in a little bit of plantar flexion, that's also functionally lengthening that limb. So by lengthening this limb and this limb, this one goes into dorsiflexion, this one goes into plantar flexion. It helps elevate the center of mass or prevent the center of mass from dropping too low. During initial contact, the leg is in dorsiflexion, which elevates the center of mass. While this is in initial contact, this other one is in pre-swing, which is in plantar flexion. And both of those elevate the center of mass or prevent it from dropping. Okay, so now we're talking about minimizing the upward displacement. And when is this going to happen? During mid stance. There's two things we're going to add in. During mid stance, when our leg is like this, as shown in the other previous thing, is we're going to add in sagittal plane knee flexion, because when we bend this knee, it kind of is lowering the body a little bit. It's gonna help lower the center of mass. I feel like that one's pretty straightforward. So I don't know, it just drops center of mass. Let's keep that one simple because it is. Okay, and then this other one, frontal plane pelvic rotation. So frontal plane, we're gonna be talking about abduction and adduction. So when you're in stance or mid stance here, normally one thing maybe we'd be looking for during gait analysis is that uncontrolled pelvic drop on the contralateral side to look for glute med weakness, looking for a Trendelenburg sign. But it's actually normal to see a little bit of a drop, like a ½ inch or an inch on the opposite side. And that's normal. That's what this is talking about. So when let's say this is your right leg, when that right leg goes into mid stance, you're gonna see the left pelvis drop just a little bit. And when that drops, it helps decrease the center of mass as well, or prevent the center of mass from going up too high. It's the same thing. Mid stance, it drops, decreases opposite pelvis. And therefore it's going to lower center of mass. Or like I keep saying, it's the same thing as preventing the center of mass from going too high. And now we have a side-to-side displacement. So this side-to-side displacement is also straightforward. Pretty much what it is step width is 8 to 10 centimeters for normal, like average people. And we choose this step width for a couple of reasons. One is by not having our feet just be stacked on top of each other, because that would help decrease the center of mass displacement, but then we won't have any stability. If we get nudged over, it'll be really easy for us to topple over. And that's what this one is representing. I just made it up like a 25 centimeter step width. The wider we go, the bigger our base of support, the more stability we'd have. However, then we're going to decrease the energy efficiency, or you could say increase the energy expenditure. So then this one right here, the golden child, the 8 to 10 centimeters step width, that's what most people choose, because then we get this ideal energy expenditure and we get a little bit of a wider base of support. However, it's shown that even if young, healthy people choose this smaller base of support, maybe because they're not used to it, or maybe just because it's not as efficient, or it increases the energy expenditure. Either way. So this one going less than the 8 to 10 centimeters or going greater than the 8 to 10 centimeters. Either way, it increases the energy expenditure. So this one is just like the golden, this is just what people choose because we get that stability and it's where we get the greatest energy efficiency. All right, so just to recap, here's what we got. We got some key concepts. We've got the more the center of mass moves, the greater the energy expenditure. And when we're on mid stance, we're at our highest. And then when we're in double limb support, one leg in flexion, one leg in extension, that's when we're at our lowest. So we have to throw in a couple extra movements in order to decrease how high or how low our center of mass moves. Then there's the two sinusoidal waves. So we go up and down and left and right. We minimize downward displacement by two things, by adding in this pelvis rotation, because by adding in this pelvis rotation, we decrease the need for flexion and extension at the hip. For sagittal plane ankle rotation, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, at a time during the gait cycle when we be at our lowest point during double limb support, we lengthen our limbs by adding in dorsiflexion, which makes the calcaneus make our leg longer, and plantar flexion because our forefoot elevates our center of mass as well or prevents it from dropping. And minimizing upward displacement, we add in this sagittal plane knee flexion nice and easy by bending my knee. My center mass drops, and that occurs during mid-stance-ish area of the gait cycle. And then during this frontal plane pelvic rotation, we have abduction, adduction. That's the plane we're talking about. We see this contralateral pelvic drop. So if my right side is in mid-stance, then this side is going to drop just a little bit because that helps lower the center of mass just a hair. And then we have this side-to-side 8 to 10 centimeter step width, because it maximizes our energy efficiency and it gives us a little bit of more stability by having a somewhat wider base of support. If you like today's video about normal gait and the gait determinants, you can check out this playlist about abnormal gait and how we move that way, but you won't see an egg. Sorry.